Well, guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm Chris with M7 Metalworks. We got another neat project here in the shop today. I think the guy that I bought this from, or at least his dad, I bought it from a young man who got it from his dad. He must have been a Miller fan because they've got this Lincoln Electric Welder painted Miller blue. Of course, it shouldn't be that color. It's in excellent condition as far as mechanically. It welds really nice. If you've seen some of my other videos previously, I actually welded with it. But this welder here is in dire need of some cosmetic work, and so that's what we're going to do today. The leads seem to be in really good shape. I won't know how good until I clean them up. Somebody's welded this handle on it. Good idea, but bad execution. You see the welds, not very nice. Fins are looking pretty poor, bent up pretty bad. The wheels aren't original, but they're not bad wheels, so I'm going to keep them. I'm just going to try to restore them up, make them a little nicer. And of course you can see the decal on the side there, the placard. It's got some paint removed. That's my fault, I did that. And here I'm just cutting off some of the welds. Almost there. Got just a little work to do. Use the chisel here, kind of break this weld free. This is a 1986 model, by the way. They were still using the metal placards back then. Now they use plastic ones. I'd much prefer the metal. They just give a better look. And now we're just going to remove those placards. Use the torch to heat this up. This side here was bent out of shape pretty good. I never quite got it perfect, but it's a lot better. Just trying to get a little bit better angle here with my grinder. And I've got a flap disc on this, so it's a lot less harsh than an actual grinding disc. Allows me to really take off just a minimal amount of steel. I've got to cut this silly little bracket off the front. It was necessary, but again, poorly executed. It's just really not done well. That's normally just a single bolt in the front, and of course these wheels are not standard, like I said, so they actually lift the welder up just a little higher than what would be normal. So I'll get a bolt and I'll actually just make it so that it's a little higher than the original bolt to match the wheels. And here I'm just kind of cleaning things up, getting the rust off of there. I'll eventually get that painted. You can see it's not perfect, but it turned out pretty good on those pieces there on the corners. Got the back off here. Pretty dirty, but we'll get it cleaned up. Fan moves, and I'm excited about that. those fans can be a pain, though this one's in excellent condition. And these tended to have very few problems because of the design of the way the fans were designed. But I'll clean that fan up and get the dirt off the fins as well. Drop a little oil down along the shaft, maybe get a little seep in there. And there it is, cleaned up. Looks a lot better. I actually put a little paint on that transformer as well. Wheels are in bad shape cosmetically. Excuse me. And you can see that fin on this right side is really bad. I'll have to straighten that up as best I can. Placard's missing a few of the little plastic things, and I can't get those plastic things off without breaking them, so I'll end up replacing it with some screws. Got it on its side here just so I can get a little bit better angle at some of the sheet metal. I did a little bit of off-camera work trying to shape the sheet metal a little bit and get some of the dings and dents out of it. Really just the bends and twists. It's got some dings in the front that I never actually bother messing with. And here I've wire wheeled the wheels here. And they're nice and shiny metal now, good and clean, ready for some paint. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of hammered black. And it's a really nice paint. This is a Rust-Oleum product. You can see there how pretty it's turned out. And here I went ahead off camera and welded some washers in there. And that's going to support that axle. I'm going to use a brass bushing as well. It's an oil-soaked bushing or oil-embedded bushing. And that'll allow that axle to pivot on that and not waller out that sheet metal. It's really a lot better way of doing it. Get this panel sanded up a little bit, get all this blue off, or at least most of it. I don't get all of the blue off, but I get most of it. I used the wire wheel on the fins because it was able to get in there and really, really clean all of the paint off of there really well. I'll show you, give you a good look at that here. And you can see it made those fins just nice, clean, shiny metal. I've got everything sanded now, ready for paint. I didn't prime this, I just painted right over what's there. I used a Rust-Oleum paint slash primer. It's a colonial red. And it's not a bad match to the original. It's not a perfect match by any stretch, but it's not bad. Now keep in mind the paint that you and I are seeing on this is a faded paint. It's old, obviously. It's 2023 and this was done in 1986, so paint's pretty old. And here I'm just using my sheet metal benders here, and I'm just kind of straightening those fins. I did it, it was much more effective on the others, but I didn't show the other fins, particularly that one on the back that was really, really bad. But you can see even here, it was necessary for some of these fins and allowed me to kind of align them just a little bit better. So I used it on all of them to make them just a little bit straighter than they were and a little more evenly spaced. Time to paint with that colonial red. Again, you can see it's not a bad match to the original Lincoln Electric Red. And that, again, that's a Rust-Oleum product. It's a paint slash primer mix. You know, essentially it bonds to the bare metal and the old paint. Now, it did a decent job. It's not great. It doesn't lay out real well, and it shows everything underneath. You know, a lot of times on these bigger items, I'll use an automotive paint, and I didn't have any for this particular project. So I went ahead and used just the Rust-Oleum for that. I even got a little bit of crackling in the back. Can't tell you guys what caused that. I've never had that with Rust-Oleum paints before. I don't know if it was because of the temperature, the humidity. We had extremely high humidity. It was cold in the shop, and we had a lot of warm, humid air blowing in. So maybe that did something with it. Here I'm putting the back on. Of course, getting those brass bushings in the base of the welder now, and then you see I'll push the rod through. Got those freshly painted wheels in there. They look great. I like that they're a little bit bigger and a little bit higher. Gets that thing a little higher off the ground, makes it a little easier to move around the shop. Handles would be nice, but the handles that they had would have taken a lot of work to clean up and to execute that. Welding them on at the top like they did it would have taken a lot. Here I'm going to just use a little bit of metal. That nut is not screwed on there, it's just a tension fit. And I'll press that on just with my hands, and I'll get in there with the MIG and just weld that up. And if the wheels ever need to be taken off, you're just gonna have to get the cutting disc out and cut it off. Though I wouldn't expect that to be something that would be needed. I didn't show, but I also did some work on the interior of the welder. I used a little dielectric grease on all of the switches and the amperage settings, and that really makes a huge difference. If you don't think it does, trust me, it does, guys. The way those things switch before and after is pretty significant difference. They switch a lot easier, and they shouldn't be difficult to switch if they've got a little bit of grease in there. So you don't want to put a ton on there, but you put just a little bit. I'm putting that bolt on that I talked about previously, and this is just a longer bolt that I had, and I did have to thread it down a little bit more because that bolt wasn't threaded quite as low as I needed it to be threaded, and that was to get the appropriate height to somewhat match those rear wheels. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I wanted it to be somewhat close. And I'm just painting everything up with some black Rust-Oleum paint. And that's just, again, that has nothing to do with looks. That's all about preservation. The ground clamp, a lot of welding boogers all over it. Gonna get the flap disc here and just kind of clean that up. That'll get the welding boogers flat, and then I use this wire wheel. If you don't have one of these things in the shop, geez, get one. I use this thing constantly. I use it on every one of the bolts on this thing. All the little screws and nuts, I use it on all that stuff. It cleans them up, makes the bolts look brand new. And now all I'm doing here is just putting a simple clear coat over that. You could paint it if you wanted to paint it to a silver or whatever. I do have blue tape, masking tape over the actual contacts because obviously you don't want paint on that. And here it is, the completed project. And with the leads all cleaned up now, I did that off camera. Just use some soapy water and rags and just rub those down real good. Get the cord as well. So there's before. Big difference now. I mean, look how nasty that thing looked. And I bought this just to flip it. It was cheap. I think I paid $200, and I got a box of tools to go with it. So, pretty cheap. I got some pretty good tools out of that tote that the guy gave me. But it'd be a difficult sell looking like it looked. So now, I mean, man, even though the paint isn't perfect, you can see some of the imperfections underneath. And of course I didn't do the tons of body work. I've got dings and dents all over it, but you know, like I say here in the video and the text, is that's all character for me. I don't have a problem with that. You know, if I've got sheet metal that's bent out of place, obviously I want to take care of that if I can, but some of those dings and dents on the side, that's not going to hurt nothing. Shows a little bit of its past. You can see the wheels turned out really good. Put a little paint on those bolts. There is no rust or dirt anywhere on this thing now. It is absolutely. I will say this: the blue paint preserved it because it had no rust on it. And I've bought these before, where they've been, you know, fairly rusty as far as surface rust. Ground clamp looks great. The leads are like new. They literally are. I could not find any cracks or dry rotting or anything like that in them. They look fantastic. I went ahead and cleaned the stinger up as well. Cleaned that switch up. Everything looks fantastic. So I've got this on our Facebook marketplace locally now, and I put it on at $500. These go for about $1,000, brand new. And honestly, this one's almost like new, so it'd be a good buy for somebody. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.